Hello everyone, this is Devlogerio. Welcome to the third episode of how to make an IO game. In this video, I am going to discuss about basics of programming and teach you about variables, functions, objects, and arrays. If you already know this stuff, you should probably skip this video, but if you're not, let's go. Okay, the first thing we should do is to open the Visual Studio Code. I already have the project open, but if you don't have it, you can always go to the file, open folder, select your project folder and select the folder. And that's it. Okay, now in the client folder, in the JS, a file called sketch.js that we created before in the last episode. Okay, this is the code that we have from the last episode. I know I have talked a little bit about functions there, or maybe variables, but we don't care about them right now because I'm gonna re-teach you the variables first. Okay, what is a variable? A variable is a storage inside your computer RAM, so you can store any data you want and you can give it a name, so whenever you want it you can call it. In order to create a variable, you can say var. Because we are using JavaScript, I'll make sure that your caps lock is off because JavaScript is a case sensitive language, so it means that this is different with this. So small a with the uppercase A, they are different. Alright, in order to create a variable, or better say a little bit of a storage inside your RAM, you can always say var and the name of your variable. This can be anything. It can be A, B, it can be Devlogerio, it can be anything. I'm gonna call it var A, and that's it. You successfully created a new variable, a new box inside your computer RAM, so you can store any data you want in there. I want to create another variable as well. I'm gonna create var B as well. So I have two variables here. Now, in order to give these variables some data or information, because these are just names, we're gonna store something in there. I can say A is equal to number 5, maybe. So what am I doing here is storing the number 5 into these variables, inside this variable, so I can use it later on. I can also give the variable number B something, so I can say B is equal to 6. Alright, so these are integers, 6 and 5. These are called integers because they are numbers. Alright, so numbers that we know in real life, they are basically integers in computer. I'm gonna write some of the different type of variables that you can have. It can be an integer, which is maybe which can be maybe number 5, number 6, 1, 2, 3. We also have something called float, and floats or double can be maybe 3.3. By the way, this is a comment. This will not be executed by the computer. 3.3, 3.5, and then we have the string. And a string will be write always whenever you're going to write a string. It should be inside this what do we call them? Whatever. You put them inside them here, inside here. So I can say Devlogerio because I want to store the Devlogerio text inside my variable, so it should be inside these quotations. Alright, let's see. So I can, instead of 5, I can say a string of Devlogerio or a string of hello world, things like that. Alright, okay, I'm gonna keep it number 5 for now. There are many more types of variables. I just I just showed you some of them so you can know. Alright, this is one way. Okay, let me bring it up here. This is one way of defining and initializing a variable. So I'm defining the variable here and I'm declaring the variable here and defining it here. That's it. There is another way of doing so, which is I can make this more simple. I can say var a, and right away I can declare it. I can say var a is equal to 5. Okay, or var b is equal to 6. All right. These 2 lines of code is the same as these 4 lines of code. Okay, but depends on your need. You're gonna use different one. But if I can do it like this, why should I do it like this? So I'm gonna delete these 4 lines of code, because we cannot define a variable twice. When I have defined the variable here var a, why I define it here again? It just conflict and maybe some errors. I'm gonna get rid of this part. Now we have a little more good looking variable definition. All right. Now, what we can do with these variables, we can use different signs, different symbols on them. So they are called operational commands. How they work? We have plus, minus, divide, multiply, and many more. I'm gonna keep it simple for now. Oh, what is that? And many more. How they work? I'm gonna create another variable and I'm gonna call it C, and now I can use these operands on my variable A and variable B. I can say C is equal to A plus B. I can also say C is equal to A minus B, or any other operand you have. Maybe okay, that's it. What it do is it's like this. It's like this. C is equal to 5 plus 6, or C is equal to 5 minus 6. All right, but we cannot do this because I have first I equal the C to the 5 plus 6, then I equal the C to 5 minus 6. So this will be always the result. So I should get rid of one of them. All right. So variable C is equal to A plus B. Why not do this? Simple, yeah? Better. So the variable C will become number 11. I can also say maybe var D is equal to, I can also use these operands on numbers as on integers or floats as well, not only use the variables. So how that works, I can say 2 plus 2 and the result will be 4. Okay, now if you remember, we had something called console log. So with the console log, with this console log we can log anything we want in the Google Chrome developers tool. So instead of console logging hello world here, I'm going to console log the number C. I will talk about this part again in a few moments, but not now. I just want to show you something. So let's not care about. I'm gonna comment this, and here I'm gonna say console.log number C. Yeah, C. The variable C. Okay, let's save. I hit Control S. I go to my project file, go to client, and double click on index.html or drag and drop it here. You can press F12 or right click on inspect, or Control Shift I, and you can see the developers tool, and you can choose the console tab, and then you can see the result. It's the 11. Let's see how it changes. So I can always change it. Maybe one of them I want it to be 10, and then I go back to the Chrome, refresh, and it is 15 now. So I'm basically doing some mathematics here. Let's go back here. What if I want to see the result of C and D? I can have 2 console logs. So okay, C, both of them are C, one of them should be D. I refresh and I have both of them here. Alright, the thing is, I can, we are just adding two numbers together. I can also say var maybe f is equal to, I can add the two strings together. I can add maybe hello plus a space, maybe world, things like that. So, oh, and by the way, all the lines, every line of code in JavaScript ends with a semicolon, so don't forget that. Now, what if I, instead of these two, maybe another console log, this time I want to log the f. I save, I go back to Chrome, refresh. As you can see, those two strings are added together. They are not seen as numbers. So this plus sign not only adds number but adds strings together as well. If you want to add these two as strings, so you can say 2 by 2 plus by 2, then refresh, and it is 2 and 2, things like that. As you can see, it is this is a string, so it's black, and this is a number, so it is blue in the console. Alright, I'm not gonna keep this like that because I just wanted to tell you about variables. This is how we define a variable. And by the way, one of the most important things is that we are here defining a global variable. What is a global variable? A global variable, let me get rid of this part because we don't need them. We don't need this. I just want to keep this number 5, only the variable a here, enough. This variable a is a global variable because it is all alone by itself inside this file. It is not inside a function like this. It's not like this. It is outside of a function. It's all alone. Okay, so it's all alone up here. It's a global variable. If it is inside a function or inside any brackets, so it's not a global function. Global functions means that they are accessible inside any function. They are accessible everywhere. Okay, they are not private. They are accessible everywhere. They are global variables. Okay, now talking about the functions, you can always check the image. Variables are covered, so functions now. Let's head over for the functions. Okay, I already talked about functions, but let's talk about it real quick. Don't care about this part. In order to create a function, just like variables, there are different ways of defining functions. So I'm gonna show you two ways of defining them. First of all is you can say, instead of a variable, you can create a function. And function is basically mean a bunch of code. A bunch of code with a name. So whenever you call that name, that bunch of code will be called. This is how you write them. You simply write function and then you give it a name. Maybe print something for me. Okay, this is how we name stuff here, because we cannot use spaces in the name. Whenever you're defining a name for your variable or your function, you cannot have spaces, you cannot have slash or any symbols. You can only have strings like that, maybe uppercase and lowercase. We always start with lowercase, and if we are going to separate the words, we can simply have we can simply separate them with uppercase. So we call this camel case naming. Okay, things like that. So I create a function with a name, print something for me, and the function is always finished with the parentheses. Okay, the functions always have a parentheses on them. I will tell you about this parentheses in a moment. And the function has open brackets and close brackets, and in here you can write the code. So inside here I'm gonna say consulted log the variable a. Now if I save this, as you can see, I'm using the console log variable a inside the function. Okay, I hit save, I go refresh the Google Chrome. I should probably see the number 5 or 6, I don't know, but I see nothing. I wrote a console log, but I see nothing here. Why? Because I created a function, but I never called it. So this is never happened here. The computer just skips my code here. It skips this function unless it sees it's called. How do we call the function? You simply get the name of function, write the name of function, and open parentheses, close parentheses. I hit save, go back to Chrome, refresh. As you can see, the number 5 is printed. Alright, now only because I called the function. Now what if I call it twice or 3 times? Let's save, go back, refresh. So 3 times we have the number 5. So simple. So functions are so good. You have 100 lines of code, you give it a function, you can call it 3 times. Simple as that. Now there is one more thing to functions. What is this parentheses? Actually, you can give a function an input. So before you call the function, you can give it some number, give it some data, so the function can do some calculations or maybe anything on those data and give you the result. How that happens, you can say, for example, this function can get a parameter. We call it a parameter. So this function gets a parameter. What is that parameter called? You can give it any name you want. It is basically a variable. For example, var a. Okay. What kind of parameter I'm gonna give it? I'm gonna give it just a name. Give me. Okay. Data. I'm gonna call it data. Good. This is called parameter. This can be anything. It can be x. It can be y. It can be data. It can be info, it can be anything. It is so good that to give your parameters a proper name, so later on you can know what they do. Okay, so maybe data is good for here. And now if I call the function, okay, nothing happens. I'm gonna use this parameter first. So whenever you call this function should get a data, and whenever it's console logging, it is not going to console log the number a anymore. It is going to console log any data that you give it. Okay, so you give your function a data, and the function will print that data out. Now, whenever I'm calling the function, I must give it a data here. What kind of data am I giving to it? I'm gonna give it number a, the variable a. Sorry. Let's go ahead and refresh. It prints number 5. Let's give it another data. Maybe I can give it in string. Hello world. I hit save, go back, refresh, and it prints hello world. So any data that I give this function, it will print out for me. There is another way of creating the function. The second way, they are somehow the same, but in the future I will tell you what is the difference between them. So a variable can also be a function. How does that work? I can say var print something else for me, just to have a different name with this. This can be equal to a function, open parentheses, close parentheses. This is basically the same. It can do the same. And again, it gets the data as parameter. Okay, this is the same as this. So if you ever see me doing this, I will tell you the difference. The order is different. For example, I create a function here, and I can call it here. Okay, so I can first call the function, then define the function. Okay, but in this case, I cannot do this. I cannot say print something else for me with the hi. Okay. So this will give us an error, and this will not. Let's go ahead and see that. Let me tell you, I basically created a variable, and that variable is holding a function. Okay, and that function do something. So, but here I am creating a global function. But here I'm creating a global variable that keeps a function. There is a little bit of difference there. and the difference is that the order of calling it. So you are going to see some errors here. Let's save. Let's go back to Google Chrome, refresh. As you can see, there is an error. It said uncut type error, and print something else is not a function at the line 11, and it is showing us exactly where is the problem. If I click that, as you can see, this line has a problem. Let's go ahead and fix that. It's gonna be simple. I already told you the order matters, so this should go after the definition of this function. Simple. I refresh, the error is gone. Hello world and hi is printed. And that was all for the functions. I'm gonna keep all of them, so just for you to know that, but in the next episode I will delete them. Alright, now we are here to the preload, setup, draw again. I already told you what they are, but it's good because now you know what are functions, you can already know them. So function preload, it's a function with a name called preload, but the thing is, this is already made by the P5js library. So what is a library? Actually, library is a bunch of code on top of your code. It's like a copy and pasting. Okay, so whenever you run your program, all the code of that library will be copy and pasted on top of your code. So this function preload is a predefined function by P5js. If you don't have this, no problem, but you will no longer have the functionality of loading. Okay, so P5js gives us some functions, and you're by calling them, overwriting them and doing our own things inside that. So preload, it has a unique functionality. Before we write any code here, it happens as a loading. And then we have the setup that happens this is the first thing happens after loading, and it only happens once, and then after that we can draw something. So why not bring this print something for me as print something else for me. Okay, let me write a comment here. Same function, same as normal function, but the order of calling does matter. Okay, so instead of calling these two functions here, I'm gonna bring them and paste them inside the setup. I'm gonna get rid of this. I'm gonna hit save, go back to Chrome and refresh. Same thing is happening here. I can change the data to maybe number 111, and it is number 111 now. Okay, that's it for the functions, and the next thing I am going to cover is the objects. And what are objects? Objects is some type of variable. So we also have object and array. These two are object for now. Object is some type of variable as well. So we can have a variable as an object. I will discuss about object a lot more in future classes because we are going to code in object-oriented way. But right now, I just want to show you real quick what is exactly an object. Object is simply a variable. So I have a variable, my object, and this variable can have anything, number, string, and now object. What is object? Objects starts with open brackets and close brackets. What are objects? Objects are basically some a package of some information, of some little information. And what information that can be? It can be, for example, an object can have multiple variables inside it. So it can has for example, it has a location. It has an x of 10. It has a y of 5. Simple. So I have an object, maybe 3, and it has, for example, a height of maybe 20. So this is the structure of an object. It starts with open brackets and close brackets. Notice that they are different with functions. They are not functions. They are just open brackets, close brackets, and then in there you have some variables, and they are called attributes. And these variables are basically they are a little bit different with here. So we don't have the equal sign and this semicolon inside the objects. Inside the objects you have the colon, whatever you want to keep inside your object, and then inside your variable, and then you have the semicolon, comma. I'm sorry, this is a comma. colon and comma. This is how you write them, and the last one does not have a comma. If you do that, no problem, but better not to do so. We can also have something else, maybe something called, for example, name. This can keeps the Vulgario, things like that. Okay, so this is an object. I will talk a lot about object in future classes. I just want to show you, just to have a little understanding of how they look. This is how you write an object. Okay, and how to access different attributes of an object. This is simple, because this is a global object. I can call it wherever I want. So I'm gonna use this my object. For example, one of my console logs in the setup, I can say print something else for me instead of this number. I want to access this X of my object. How do I do that? I just give it the name, say the name of my object, and then I do a dot operand, and then as you can see, Visual Studio Code is helping us to find different attributes, or better said, properties of this object. I can choose between them. For example, I say X. So X was number 10. Let's save, go back to Chrome, refresh, and I have access to the number 10. Let's access to maybe the name as well. Control S, refresh. I have access to the name of this object. So this is basically an object with a name, X and Y. I talk a lot more about it. Now, the final thing, which is an array. I also want to quickly talk about arrays, because we're not going to focus on them right now. Okay, by the way, right now, because you know what are objects. Objects are basically some brackets with a bunch of properties and attributes inside them. Now you can know that if you see something like this, you will know that this console is an object by default. So we are accessing a property of that object. Log is a property of this console. But log here is a function which is called a method. Don't care. Right now you know that console is an object. All right. One more thing that I didn't mention is that whenever you are creating a function and that function gets a parameter, input parameter, this is called input. It can be anything, blah blah blah. Right now I call it data. Whenever your function gets a parameter and where you are going, for example here, I'm calling the function, I have to pass some data as this parameter. This data is called argument. So my function has my function gets an input parameter, and whenever I'm calling it, I should give it an argument. So this is how you this is how it's called in programming world. We call this a parameter, and whenever we are gonna fill that parameter with something up, we call it argument. So we give it an argument. Here the input is called parameter, and parameter as an argument as the parameter input. Alright, now let's talk about arrays. What are arrays? An array is another type of variable again. So I'm gonna create another global variable. I'm gonna create my array. I'm gonna give this is a name, any name you want. This can be any name you want. Okay, and my array is gonna be if you remember, objects were like this: open curly brackets, close curly brackets. But arrays are a little bit different. They open with brackets, open and close with brackets, simple brackets. And an array is simply a list of data. A list of data. How that list works, it can have, for example, number 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. So this array is keeping, this is a list of numbers. Okay, I can have another array with a list of, for example, strings S, B, number 4, DA, AS. Okay, they can also have multiple types, so nobody cares here, but an array is simply a list of different data. Okay, so a list of information. Okay, what is special about arrays? What makes it different with objects? Arrays now have we can loop through each one of these variables inside the array. Okay, so each of these can be considered as a variable as well. Whenever we are going to access, for example, this B, how do I access it? Let's go ahead inside the setup and access that as well. So I'm gonna I'm gonna call another print something else for me, and this time I'm gonna access one of the elements. These are called elements. So I have an array, and these are elements of that array, and there is something that is called index. So let's say it like that. Each data in array is called element, and each element has its own index. And what is index? Okay, you already know that these are elements of the array. Okay, and how to access them? In order to access the elements of the array, you should know the index of them. So what is index? Index is basically means what is the number of it. This is the 0 element, the first element, second element. So one important thing is that arrays in JavaScript are 0 indexed. What does that mean? It means that the S is always the index 0. It always starts from 0. Let's say. So on top of each element, I'm gonna write its own index, so you can know. So this is the index 0. This is the index 1. This is the index 2. This is the index 3. This is the index 4. Index 5. And index 6. Okay, how to access this S? So whenever I'm printing something, I can say my array 1. Where is my array? I don't want this one. This is. I call the array, and in order to access its elements, I should give it the index of them. So if I give it the index number 0, what happens? Let's save. Let's go back to Chrome. Oh, I refresh. Okay, I have the S printed here. We can also have, for example, index number 3. Okay, let me change it to, this is the third element. Okay, let's access the number 3. Too much. This. Okay. I'm gonna access the elements number 3. So elements number 3. I write it here. I save. I refresh, and this is printed on the Google Chrome console. So if you notice that the third element is actually the fourth one. So zero, let's say this 0, 1, element number 1, element number 2, and element number 3. But 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth one is actually the element number 3. So keep that in mind. That's important. This is it about arrays and objects for now. There are a lot more to it, but I think that's enough for today. Thank you very much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. In the next episode, I'm gonna dive into more advanced stuff, and we are going to start the server up and create a template for our game. So from then, whenever you are going to create or start creating a new IO game, this is going to be your template, and you just copy and paste the template, start coding the actual game. So basically, in the next video, I already said we're gonna get rid of everything that we write here and create a real template, and we also go ahead and write something in Nodejs because that is so important. Thank you very much for watching. Please consider subscribing and turn on the notifications so you will know about the next episode. Goodbye.